Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to a little bit of a special episode that I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if I'm going to bill this as like a new album spotlight or just kind of a separate feature that I'm doing, but I wanted to talk a bit about an album that's really important to me, that really was influential to my musical tastes and was a defining point in my musical journey. And it's relevant right now because the band just released a re-recorded version of it just this week. So I want to talk about that and about my history with the record. And we're talking about Incubus and their album Morning View. And why I'm not sure quite how to frame this on the channel is because usually I talk about progressive rock. That's my favorite genre and what I love. And this is obviously not a progressive rock album. This is more of an alternative rock album, indie rock, or some people would even argue a bit of nu metal to their early sound. But when I was a young kid, when I was a teenager, I was really into this style of music. I really loved alternative rock, and I would look up all of the hot alternative rock tracks. I'd listen to the radio, to rock radio, and I'd record on tape or, download or find some way to access the big rock songs of the time, and I'd put them on, blank CDs and listen to them all the time. But I really connected with several singles from Incubus from this album. I really loved Wish You Were Here. I really loved Nice to Know You. And I'm liking a lot from this band. I want to explore them further. If I like several of their singles, maybe I'll like their full album. So it was really the first time I went and bought a full album by a band. And I went to the local Best Buy and found it and purchased it and listened to the record from front to back. I think even on the car ride home and later that same day, and just was completely blown away by the record as a whole. I really enjoyed the experience, and I loved how the record had just this interesting vibe to it, and it all fit together really well in my mind, and it kind of sparked something in me. It made me, for the first time, really love the album as a format, when before, like I said, I was just cherry picking different songs and just trying to find out what the coolest songs were that were being played on the radio or that my dad liked or whatever. But this was the first time I was really obsessed with an album in whole, and I actually went not too long after back to Best Buy and bought out all the other records that they had released up to that point. So it was a really fun experience, and it was really important to me as a young kid, and I just really love Incubus, and I think they do have some elements of prog in their sound, stuff that's a little bit more creative than your typical alternative rock at the time, and especially if you go look at some of their early records, they have a lot of experimental type things that are going on in some of those records. So I think it opened my mind and expanded my brain a little bit to be interested in prog when it was introduced to me later, and so I think this was an important stepping stone to that. And I just love the record Morning View because this is a band from California, which is where I'm from as well. And they just went off into this house in Malibu and just decided to shut themselves off from the world a bit and just focus on creating this record. And I think it has a certain vibe to it because of how it was crafted. They were able to shut out these outside influences and just craft a record that feels like it fits in this, Malibu, California kind of atmosphere. There's a bit of a softer, more acoustic touch to some of the tracks than what they were known for at the time. They had some pretty heavy material up to this point. Of course, they had some of acoustic singles and some more lighter stuff, but this really focuses a lot on it with some of the tracks like 11 a.m. or Mexico. It's a really cool blend and balance because they definitely still have some of the heavier tracks as well, but it all provides for an interesting feel that works together as a whole piece of music. I think it's a brilliant work from the band. And they decided to re-record it. At first, its 20th anniversary, but it's actually 23 years old because it came out in 2001. They had some issues because they wanted to do kind of an anniversary, but of course that was when the pandemic was at its height, so they weren't able to tour it and celebrate it like they wanted, so they ended up doing a live stream performance of Morning View, but it sparked enough interest for them to want to re-record the record. They were really into those songs and that part of their history, so they decided to dive deep and re-record the whole album and to feature one of their newer members, their new bass player, Nicole Rowe. So here they are with a re-recorded version of the album, And I think it sounds really good. I'm really excited. I went to, probably a mistake, but I went to Reddit to kind of get the feel of what fans are saying about the record. And there was a lot of negativity of like, why did they do this? Morning View was perfect already. Brandon's voice is not quite what it used to be, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's perfectly fine for a band to re-record an album if they so choose, if that's their creative outlet. And the original album exists. If you want to listen to just the original Morning View and not really listen to this new re-recorded version because you find that classic record just to be so pristine and important to you, then that's fine. You don't have to listen to this new record. But I think it's a fantastic exploration into where the band's at now, and it's cool to compare and contrast. They added a couple of different elements to it. There's a bit of a longer introduction to Nice to Know You that's really cool, a 2-minute long intro that's really interesting and fascinating and brings another element to the table. There's some light background female vocals that take place on a couple different tracks, like Just a Phase, and I believe Echo also has some of those female vocals as well. Brandon's voice admittedly is aged and not quite as pristine as it was back in the day, but I think it brings kind of some interesting character to the mix and brings kind of a different perspective, which I really find interesting. It's a really cool vibe. As for some of the more proggier tracks that kind of spoke to me as a young budding prog fan, I really enjoyed Just a Phase, which has this really slow, methodical feel to it, really develops in an interesting way and takes its time and then explodes into a whole different thing towards the end of the track. I really like the build-up. I like how it's structured, and it's just a little bit unconventional, the melody and how it works. I just really found it fascinating. It was always one of my favorites on the record. And Aqua's transmission at the end has this different sound to it because it introduces these Chinese instruments, such as the pipa and Japanese-style orchestra led by Suzy Katayama. The pipa apparently was given to their guitar player Mike Eisinger from Steve Vai, so kind of interesting background to that as well. But it has this, cool kind of oriental flavor to it that brings a different facet into the band and is a beautiful closing track as well. I just really like this record. I like how it blends these different feels and styles, how it has some of that heavier, almost nu metal type sound at tracks like Circles and Have You Ever and Blood on the Ground. But then it also has more of a laid back, lighter flavor that I think comes from that beachy feel from how they recorded it. Like 11 a.m. or Mexico or even something like Warning. It just brings a different flavor and feel, but it all feels like it was crafted in the same sessions and that it all works together to bring a very cool record that feels at the same time varied and cohesive, which is an expert feat to perform and pull off. So an important record to me that I just wanted to feature in Spotlight, and I do like the re-recorded version. I'll probably prefer, of course, the classic version because that's what I loved as a kid and what brings back that nostalgia. But it was really fun to listen to the re-recorded version, to pick out the little differences here and there. And they beefed up the sound a little bit in sections. There's some really cool bass work that's going on. Some of the scratching and DJ kind of moments are a little bit more prominent perhaps in different sections. So there's a lot of cool little tidbits to take note of. But by and large, it's mostly pretty faithful to the original record, which I think was a good move since the original record is so great already on its own. So just a little bit of a diversion. Hopefully you guys appreciated me talking about this. I know it's not my typical progressive rock, but it's an album that's really important to me. And I think we all have these records that we grew up with that aren't really in the traditional lane of prog, but mean a lot to us because of where we were at the time, even if our musical tastes have somewhat evolved and changed as time has moved forward. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you'll join me for future episodes. So thank you guys, and enjoy the music out there. Bye, everybody.